Some teams changed their future in free agency. Some teams just burnt a lot of money. Some teams did absolutely nothing. So today I'm going to rank all 32 teams and put them in different tiers. So let's get started. I'm going to put the Buffalo Bills in tier 3, paying too much but filling their needs. I feel like they overpaid with the trade for DJ Moore, a second round pick. I think he was declining last year and he's getting a little bit older, but he does fill a specific need of getting a number one wide receiver for the Bills, which they've been looking for. And Bradley Chubb, 3 years, $43.5 million, which I think is a little bit of an overpay, especially at his age and his production. But again, it fills their need of getting an edge. So that's why we're going to have the Bills in tier 3. Yeah. I'm going to put the Dolphins in tier 2, smart, but still questions. I mean, the question really is Malik Willis, right? He had two good games for the Packers where he kind of looked like a star. And I don't know if he's going to be a top 10 QB or even a top 20 QB. But if he turns out to be even half or 75% of what he did in that Packers game, the Dolphins are going to have themselves a starting quarterback. And then from there, they could build around him. So I think taking a chance on Malik Willis is smart. And there's questions for the overall roster. They have a new head coach. But I think that move deserves to put them in tier 2. I'm going to put the Patriots in tier 1. They know what they're doing. I really like getting rid of Stephon Diggs at this point, especially with all the baggage he has outside, off the field. And Romeo Doubs, I think, is a good replacement, especially in this Patriots offense. He could easily be a high-tier wide receiver 2 or even a number 1 wide receiver with the flashes he's shown in Green Bay. Obviously, in Green Bay, he's been in a crowded wide receiver room. So now in New England, maybe he'll be a number 1. They're signing of Draymond Jones and Elijah Vera Tucker to secure the O-line and that D-line. I really like securing the trenches for the Patriots. That's kind of where they lacked in the Super Bowl, and they showed a weakness in the Super Bowl in the trenches against the Seahawks. So shoring that up, not making too many significant changes, but enough that their team isn't exactly the same, and they still have the draft to build on. And lastly, we're going to go with the Jets. I'm putting the Jets in standing still while the league moves. With Geno Smith, it's not a horrible move, but it really keeps their team at a standstill. They're not going to be that much better. I mean, they got Minka Fitzpatrick for the defense, but we all know what the Jets are doing. They're looking at 2027. They're thinking about that quarterback class, maybe Arch Manning or a different QB in 2027. So they have all those first-round picks, and they're going to build through the draft. So I think it makes sense for them to not make too many moves this season, not try to win too many games, and hopefully get a high first-round pick next year. I think that's kind of obviously what they're doing. Okay, next we're going to go with the Ravens. I think the Ravens know what they're doing. With the Max Crosby trade, they knew they needed an edge, and they overpaid for 2 first-round picks. And if that went through, I might have put them in paying too much but filling needs. But they backed out of the trade, which, some people may say is unethical, but that's what they did. And they got Trey Hendrickson for a little bit of a lower price. No first-round picks, of course. So that gives them a good edge, even though I feel like he did decline last year. But it was for sure some injuries, so we'll see how he performs. And overall, really, they just need... their offense is going to be elite. They have Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. As long as Lamar stays healthy, it's all about the defense for the Ravens. But with Jesse Minter coming in, I feel like he's going to be able to do what he does with that defense. And I think they are going to be favorites in the AFC North. No doubt. They were favorites last year. It didn't turn out too well. They were one game from the playoffs. But I think they're making the playoffs this year. I'll do an early call. Baltimore's making the playoffs. Bengals, I'm going to put into smart, but still questions. I feel like they shored up that defense with Boya Mafe from the Seahawks and Jonathan Allen. Those are 2 nice picks on the front 7. So I really like how they're doing on defense, as long as they draft some more defensive players as well. Really, the question, though, the reason I put them smart, but still questions, is because it's all Joe Burrow's health. Joe Burrow stays healthy, they're probably contenders. Joe Burrow gets injured, they're not making the playoffs. It's simple as that with the Bengals, and they're still in this position where they haven't shorn up the O-line significantly, to where you know for sure Joe Burrow's staying healthy, especially in that division with now Trey Hendrickson, Myles Garrett. It's all about Joe Burrow's health. That's the only question really with the Bengals. And that's why they're in smart but still questions. Next, we'll go with the Cleveland Browns. I'm actually going to put them in smart but still questions too. And the reason I'm doing this is because I feel like they did pretty well with that O-line. They picked up Tyus Howard from the Texans, Zion Johnson as well. And these aren't elite players on the O-line, but they're better, right? Now, the main question for the Browns is not their defense. They had an elite defense. They shore up that O-line. Of course, they still don't have the weapons. They have Judkins, Harold Fannin. So there's some youth in there. But it's the quarterback question. Is Deshaun Watson the starter? Is Shedeur Sanders the starter? That's the big question with the Browns. And that's why they're in still questions. But they know they have the defense. They know their offense needs to be better. And that's really all it is with the Browns. So we'll see what they draft. And I mean, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs with either quarterback. But you never know. Maybe we get surprised. I think they can be better, though, than last year for sure. And then lastly, we have the Steelers. I'm going to put the Steelers in smart but still questions as well. They traded for Michael Pittman, which I think is really good. And he'll be a nice compliment to DK Metcalf. That's a pretty solid receiving core. And they got Rico Dowdle to pair alongside Jalen Warren, which I think is also a nice running back room. And, I mean, they have a lot of defensive talent. Obviously, their defense didn't perform to the standard they should have last season. And losing Mike Tomlin might not be the best thing for them. But I still think with all of that being said, they still have an opportunity here. But the question for the Steelers, and the reason I don't think they're going to make the playoffs this year, is because they don't have a quarterback. Is Aaron Rodgers coming back? We don't know that. Is Will Howard the quarterback? We don't know that. Are they drafting? We don't really know what the Steelers are doing at QB. And like a lot of the teams in but still questions, it's the quarterback question. Well, like the Browns. Do the Steelers have a quarterback? Is Aaron Rodgers coming back? I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to come back, personally, but we'll see. On to the NFC North. So we got the Chicago Bears. I initially had the Bears in they know what they are doing, but the more I look into it, the amount of defensive backs they lost is kind of alarming, right? And they didn't re-sign a lot of the players, but I thought the DJ Moore trade, they won because DJ Moore was on the decline. He's getting older. A second-round pick is very good for DJ Moore. So I thought they won that. They got Kobe Bryant from the Seahawks, which I think is a good pickup. But they did lose a few notable defensive backs, and that's why I'm going to move them back to smart but still questions. Their defense, all last season, I think had a lot of turnovers, but they still weren't a top tier defense. They were getting turnovers, but in terms of yards and scoring, they weren't the best. And I think that's going to be a concern again because Ben Johnson's got the offense rolling. They had a run game. They had the receiving core rolling. But yeah, that defensive back room is going to look a little different, and we'll see how it comes out. Maybe they'll answer that in the draft. Okay, next we got the Lions. The Lions I'm going to put in tier 4, standing still while the league moves. And really, the reason is they haven't made too many notable moves. They traded Dave Montgomery for a 5th-round pick. That's more of a loss. And then they got Isaiah Pacheco. I think that's more of a downgrade for them than an upgrade. Obviously, last year they dealt with injuries again on that O-line. So we'll see how that O-line performs now. They got a little unlucky. They were pretty close to making the playoffs last year, but they got unlucky towards the end in a few games. But I don't think they made many notable changes. They're kind of running it back. So we'll see how they perform. I'm not too excited with what the Lions have been doing this free agency. Okay, next we'll go for the Green Bay Packers. I'm going to put the Green Bay Packers in standing still while the league moves as well. They obviously traded Rashawn Gary to the Cowboys. They lost Romeo Doubs to the Patriots. Those are 2 significant moves. But they made some upgrades with Javon Hargrave and a few other players to shore up that defense. And I feel like they're going into next season with the mindset that if they can just stay healthy, if Michael Parsons can stay healthy, and their O-line can stay healthy going into the playoffs, that they will perform better, right? Because Michael Parsons and a few other notable players got injured midway to the back end of the season. And then I think they felt that was the reason they didn't perform up to the high standards. So they're kind of going in the mindset, let's just stay healthy, run it back with the majority of the same team. And we'll see how that goes for them. And lastly, the Minnesota Vikings. I'm going to put the Minnesota Vikings in smart, but still questions. And the Minnesota Vikings, I think this is a questionable one where people may argue, but I feel like for what they had at quarterback with J.J. McCarthy, they overperformed. Their defense was top tier with Brian Flores. He's coming back. And offensively, they were so bad because of the horrible quarterback play. And if Kyler Murray comes in, right, a lot of people are questioning Kyler Murray. He's not that good. He's not great. But if he comes in and even plays average quarterback, they're going to probably make the playoffs. They had 9 wins last year. If they can just get decent quarterback play from Kyler Murray, I think they have a good chance, especially with the weapons surrounding him. Kevin O'Connell, the offensive mind. There's no question that they can be contenders or at least make the playoffs. When they had Sam Darnold 2 years ago take them to 14 wins, I don't see why the Vikings can't get 10, 11 wins as long as Kyler Murray plays above average QB or even average QB. So first we're going to go with the Atlanta Falcons. Now I'm going to put the Atlanta Falcons standing still while the league moves. And the reason really is they didn't make too many notable moves, right? They franchise tagged Kyle Pitts, they released Kirk Cousins, and they replaced him with Tua. And I feel like this is different than the Vikings because although the Falcons have a talented roster, they still never have proven that ability, right? They're in a really lackluster division, and even in that lackluster division, they couldn't pull it out. And although Tua might be an upgrade over Kirk Cousins, I don't know if he is an upgrade over Kirk Cousins. And they have decent weapons, so Tua has really no excuse here, and I think he has a chance to succeed. But it's going to be this weird quarterback controversy with Tua and Michael Penix. That'll be interesting. Defensively, they were solid last year as well, and they're keeping the same defensive coordinator with Kevin Stefanski, who's a 2-time head coach of the year. So I'm putting them in standing still while the league moves, but that doesn't mean that they don't have a chance to be contenders or perform next year or possibly win the division. I actually think they might be favorites to win the division, either them or the Panthers. I'm going to put the Saints in paying too much, but filling needs. And yeah, they paid a little bit hefty prices, but I thought they filled the needs. With Alvin Kamara possibly retiring and definitely on the decline, they got Travis Etienne. I think that'll fit well in Kellen Moore's offense. They got David Edwards for the O-line, which is important. So they're overpaying, but they're filling the proper needs to make their offense and defense better. We'll see. Really, what it comes down to the Saints is Tyler Shough the guy. If Tyler Shough's the guy, they have a good chance right here. But I'm 50-50 on it. He looked good sometimes not. So the Saints, it's going to be an interesting team. I'm actually looking forward to watching the Saints, especially in Kellen Moore's offense. He's definitely one of the better offensive minds in the league. Okay, we're going to put the Panthers in paying too much but filling needs. Now, the Panthers, I think, are one of the teams who overpaid the most, besides maybe another team coming up. But the Panthers, got Jaden Phillips, 4 years, $120 million. Devin Lloyd, 3 years, $45 million. I actually think that was a great deal. 3 years, $45 million for Devin Lloyd. I wish the Broncos did that. So that's a pretty good deal. But Jaden Phillips, I thought was a little overpay. And they lost Rico Dowdle. I really think the Panthers, obviously they're focusing on the defensive end, which is good, but I don't trust Bryce Young, and I'm going to be honest, I feel like offensively is where they're going to struggle. Sometimes offensively they looked dominant, and then there were some games they just looked so inept they couldn't even move the ball, right? And they're one of the craziest teams. I think this whole division is a bunch of question mark teams and really interesting. I think it was a crapshoot last season. I think it'll be a crapshoot this season because the Panthers are going to have a good defense. They had a good defense last year, I remember, and I think they're going to have a better defense this season. So with Devin Lloyd and Jalen Phillips, that's going to be a solid defense. So it's going to be question marks on the offensive end. Is Bryce Young capable of leading this team? I mean, he did it last year. Took them to the playoffs. Almost beat the Rams. So the Panthers have a good shot here. We'll see how they perform. Now we're going to go with the Tampa Bay Bucks. I'm going to put the Bucks, I actually had them smart but still questions at first. But I'm going to move them down all the way to standing still while the league moves. And the reason here is because they lose Mike Evans. And even after Chris Godwin did not look the same last season. I know after a year he might look better, but I'm not sure. That was a really brutal injury. So he has and Emeka Egbuka started tapering off towards the end of the year as well. So you lose Mike Evans. You sign a few players on defense, Kenneth Gainwell to back up Bucky Irving. But that offense it looked wrong last year. Something broke in the middle with Todd Bowles, and I think he's going to be on the hot seat to start this year. I feel like he might get fired this year, Todd Bowles, because they won the Super Bowl with Bruce Arians and Tom Brady. And then Todd Bowles came in. This is not the same Bucs team. Their defense has taken steps back. And I'm not sure Baker Mayfield's just going to carry your team. You need to surround Baker Mayfield with the right weapons. And we'll see what they do in the draft. But it looks like a deteriorating team. And yeah, I'd put them standing still while the league moves. And I could honestly see them even dropping down. No idea what they're doing, because I could see this Bucs team really struggling. They're going to be my contender for last in the NFC South. I think they might be last in the NFC South, calling it right here. Okay, AFC South. So we're going to start with the Texans. I think the Texans are smart, but still questions. I like that trade for David Montgomery. I wish the Broncos traded for David Montgomery. That was a good trade. And they got Reed Blankenship, extended Daniil Hunter. That's an elite defense. No question about it. Elite defense. And essentially, all the Texans really need to do is focus on the offense. So we'll see what they do in the draft. CJ Stroud, they're going to commit to CJ Stroud. And obviously, he did not perform well last year in the playoffs. But you never know. Maybe he's had some good years. So that's really the question with the Browns. Is CJ Stroud the guy? That defense is going to carry them. They're going to be good on defense. Top 5 defense again, no doubt. They have all the players. Really, they got David Montgomery, so you would expect a better run game. That's where they struggled last year. If they can have a good run game, CJ Stroud can just play game manager with that solid receiving core, then I think they'll be fine. But the question is CJ Stroud again. That's the question. Jacksonville, we're going to put in standing still while the league moves. Obviously, they lost Travis Etienne and Devin Lloyd. I think those are 2 big losses for the Jacksonville Jags. They didn't really make many replacements. Chris Rodriguez, I don't really see where the Jags are improving here. They're obviously declining as a team. I mean, they're going to say Byshell Tune's the guy now over Travis Etienne. I mean, that's a long shot, but we'll see. Maybe he can be the guy. Trevor Lawrence showed big improvements last year, and I think he's going to have a good year again, especially under Liam Cohen's offense the second year. Defensively, though, they showed lapses at different moments, and losing Devin Lloyd, I feel like, is a big loss. I think everyone's overlooking that. Especially, he's one of the best coverage linebackers in all of football. So, not to say they're not going to be good, but they're not going to be as good, especially on defense. Okay, this is the first team and no idea what they're doing, the Indianapolis Colts. And I really do not like the Colts signings. Daniel Jones, 2 years, $88 million, potentially $100 million a year, $50 million a year for Daniel Jones off an Achilles. The stats behind Achilles are really rare. Most players don't come back normal after an Achilles. And Daniel Jones was playing well, but $50 million a year, I don't know about that one. And Alec Pierce as well. Not to say he's not a good receiver. 4 years, $114 million, though. You're telling me Alec Pierce is the number 1 receiver. He never even had 50 catches last year. You were barely targeting him. And then you trade Michael Pittman away. The Colts look like they're going to be one of the teams I think are going to be on. I mean, they were declining last year. They had that big lapse at the end of the year. I mean, I might be wrong about them, but I think they continue into this year on that same downtrend. That trade for Sauce as well, they lost a lot of picks here. So, I don't really see the path for the Colts to even make the playoffs. I just don't see the Colts making the playoffs or being really contenders here. And that's why I'm going to put them no idea what they're doing. Lastly, for this division, we're going to go the Titans. I think they're paying too much, but filling needs. Wan'Dale Robinson, 4 years, $80 million, $78 million. I don't like that signing. Wan'Dale Robinson, he performed well in the Giants, but a lot of his stats were in garbage time, and I don't really like that signing. But he is a wide receiver, and they didn't need a wide receiver. Jonathan Franklin Myers from the Broncos, he's a good player, but I still think they overpaid. That was a crazy deal. And they released L'Jarius Sneed. Obviously he barely played any games, but they're paying too much. But they have to fill these needs, and no one wants to play for the Titans. And you need to get Cam Ward a receiver. Got Wan'Dale Robinson. I still think they're a few years away, maybe a year or 2 years away. We'll see what they do in the draft. But yeah, no, I don't think anyone's predicting the Titans to make the playoffs, and I wouldn't either. Okay, NFC East. We're going to start with the Dallas Cowboys. I'm going to put the Cowboys in smart, but still questions. I like what the Cowboys are doing. The Cowboys traded for Rashawn Gary after they lost Mike Parsons, so they take the other Packers edge rusher, which I like. They franchise tag George Pickens, keep him around. I think it's okay. So I think the Cowboys have filled some needs. I still think the question with the Cowboys is the defensive whole room, the whole defense. The question with the Cowboys is the whole defense, right? Offensively, they're going to have firepower. We all know they're going to have firepower. That's not a question. Dak and those two receivers, Javonte Williams re-signed, they're going to be good on offense. What is that defense like? Can they just improve it even slightly? If they even improve their defense by a decent margin, yeah, they're making the playoffs. So I like the Cowboys here. I think they probably have a good shot to make the playoffs. Okay, next we're going to move to the New York Giants. I'm putting the New York Giants up here, smart, but still questions as well. I mean, the real question with the Giants is not their talent. They have a lot of young picks. Jackson Dart, Cam Scatterbo, Malik Neighbors. They got Isaiah Likely now. They got Patrick Ricard. So they're getting a lot of decent players from the Ravens and overall on this team. And I know players like to play for John Harbaugh, so that's really good for the Giants. The question with the Giants is just, how does it look under John Harbaugh? Does John Harbaugh transfer to the Giants? Does everything he did at the Ravens really move forward for the Giants? And I think it does. But we're yet to see that, and I think it's still undecided. But I don't see why not. And they're a sneaky team. I will say that. They're a sneaky team. I still feel defensively they might not be 100% there. And, offensively they had some good moments last year, but it still wasn't 100% consistent. So I'm not going to call them a playoff team, but I think they're going to be in the mix as well. I'm going to say the Eagles know what they're doing. Now, I think the Eagles know what they're doing because, for example, Jalen Williams they trade for him last season. He signed with the Panthers. They get a draft pick for that. So they just pretty much got the draft pick back. They traded for Jalen Phillips. They lose Reed Blankenship, of course, which is a decent loss. But they re-sign everyone else. They get Tariq Woolen, who I think is a very good player, very good DB. Re-sign Jordan Davis. And I think they probably will trade A.J. Brown here. So they're making moves, and they're going to build in the draft slowly. I think that's what they do. They have this contender roster built with that big O-line, Saquon, Jalen Hurts. I mean, they know what they're doing, and they're going to make the playoffs. That's not a question. They're going to be in the mix. It's just, does that offense start to click this season with the new offensive coordinator? Because last year it wasn't looking too great offensively for the Eagles. Washington, I'm going to put in paying too much, but filling needs. They got Odafe Owe for 4 years, $100 million. I think that's an okay deal. $25 million for him, but they needed an edge rusher. So that's why I think it's okay. They re-signed Laramie Tunsil to the most ever in O-line. But obviously they need O-line. I don't know. I feel off about the Washington Commanders. They had that 1 year where they made the They had that year where they made the NFC Championship. But I don't know if this is the Commanders' time. I still think there's something missing with that team. They don't have this weapon. They don't have, Debo, he was a decent weapon. Their running back room is not looking too great. Yeah, I'm not too high on the Washington Commanders, so I'm gonna put them paying too much but filling needs, and I wouldn't be surprised if they miss the playoffs again this year. Okay, on to the NFC West. We're gonna go with the Arizona Cardinals first. I'm gonna put the Arizona Cardinals, another team, and no idea what they're doing. Obviously, they released Kyler Murray, and they signed Kendrick Bourne and Gardner Minshew. Now, obviously, I put them no idea what they're doing, but we know what they're doing. They're tanking, right? They're not going to be contenders next year. They're not going to have a good team next year. Their whole team is not very good. And defensively, offensively, I would say the Cardinals are kind of in a hard position because they're in one of the best divisions last year. And their team is so far behind that division. They need to build in the draft, and they need a star quarterback. You're not going to... Jacoby Brissett, he had some good games, but he's not going to carry you in that division. In a division where you have the Seahawks, you have the 49ers, the Rams. The Cardinals are just... They're kind of just the butt of the division and the butt of the whole NFC, to be honest. We'll see what they do, but I think they're probably going to repeat as one of the worst teams again. The Cardinals get more than 6 wins, I'd be surprised. It's not looking good for the Cardinals. Okay, now for the rest of the division, that's really good. I'm going to put the Rams in. They know what they're doing. That trade for Trent McDuffie, I know they paid a high price, but that was their weakness. Their weakness was their DB core. Their offense clicked with Matt Stafford, MVP. Good receivers, good running back room. Their weakness was the defensive backs. And they traded for one of the premier all-pro corners. They signed Jalen Watson as well on a decent deal. And they pretty much reworked that DB room. They know what they're doing. They know their weakness. And they did this before. The last time they won the Super Bowl, they traded a first-round pick to fill a few gaps on the team. And then they went out to win, right? They traded for Von Miller, and they won that Super Bowl. That trade with the Chiefs for Trent McDuffie is kind of a mirror of that. Maybe not exactly the same, but they feel like they are close to getting over the edge, and they needed to make a move. So they did, and they know what they're doing. The Seahawks, I'm going to put the Seahawks in standing still while the league moves. And that's not fully negative on the Seahawks. They won the Super Bowl, right? They're not going to go out and just make crazy moves after winning the Super Bowl. I think they think that their team just has a strong core, and they can stay with that. They re-signed Rashid Shaheed. I like that move. Josh Jobe. They re-signed Josh Jobe. And obviously they lost Kenneth Walker. I think it's okay losing Kenneth Walker. They didn't really get a good replacement for him. But I feel like they know they didn't want to overpay for Kenneth Walker. And he did get paid a fairly high price. So I think the Seahawks are kind of staying put with that Super Bowl roster. And want to just run it back. And the real question with the Seahawks is, what does their offense look like without Clint Kubiak? Because he was a driving force on that offense, the offensive coordinator. And if they can still look somewhat decent, they can probably run it back. I don't think the Seahawks are going to win the Super Bowl back-to-back, but that's just me. Lastly, for this division, we're going to go with the 49ers. I'm going to put the 49ers, originally I had them in smart but still questions. And they went out, they lost Brandon Ayuk, of course. We already knew they were losing Brandon Ayuk. They also got the DT from the Cowboys for a third-round pick and got Dre Greenlaw after the Broncos released him. So that's 2 defensive pickups that are pretty nice. Mike Evans, offensively. The injury thing is still, with the electrical power plant with the 49ers. I don't know if that's real or not yet, but George Kittle is still not back. He tore his Achilles. They're saying he'll be back. I like the 49ers. I do. They're going to make it again with Kyle Shanahan. He always makes it. They're going to be good. So I'm going to move them up. I'm going to move the 49ers up to know what they're doing. I like the Mike Evans signing. I really do. Okay, Denver Broncos. We'll save the Denver Broncos for last, actually. So Los Angeles Chargers. I put standing still while the league moves. And I'm going to keep them in standing still while the league moves. I think, really, the Chargers feel like last year, they weren't fully healthy. They lost the 2 tackles. And with their 2 tackles, Justin Herbert will be better protected. And their defense was already good. And now they have Mike McDaniel as their offensive coordinator. So they probably feel like if they just run it back with a decent team, they obviously got Tyler Biadasz, the center, re-signed Khalil Mack, and they lost Zion Johnson, but I don't think that's too big of a loss for them. They might sign or draft another O-lineman. We'll see what they do. But I definitely feel the Chargers feel that their 2 OTs, Rashawn Slater and Joel, if they stay healthy with Justin Herbert, that receiving core, they're going to be fine offensively. Their defense was good last year. So they don't need to make too many big moves. And they're kind of staying still with that same roster that almost won the division. So I'll keep them standing still while the league moves. Raiders, I feel like, is an obvious one. They're paying too much, but filling needs. They overpaid a center, Tyler Linderbaum, 3 years, $81 million, $27 million a year. $9 million over the other highest paid center, which obviously is a high price. And that's the price you pay when you're the Raiders. But even with that, I feel like they are filling needs. We know they're going to draft Fernando Mendoza first overall. Quay Walker, Kwity Paye. They traded Geno Smith away. And they have Clint Kubiak, the offensive mind. So they're going to be better. There's no way they're not better. I still don't think they're there. But they're going to be better. They're not going to have the first pick next year. And yeah, I think they overpaid a little bit too much. But they're filling needs for sure. We're going to go Chiefs. Honestly think the Chiefs know what they're doing. A lot of people will question the Trent McDuffie trade, but the Chiefs do this all the time. They have these DBs come in. We could go through L'Jarius Sneed, Tyrann Mathieu. They have these DBs. They depart either in a trade or they let them get signed elsewhere. And they always somehow churn out new, high-quality, all-pro DBs every time. And I think they know Trent McDuffie is getting paid a high price. They don't want to pay a DB that much. They get another first-rounder right in front of the Broncos. They know that. They knew that first-rounder was right in front of us. On top of that, they get Kenneth Walker. So once Patrick Mahomes comes back, they'll have a run game, which allows them to have play action. Travis Kelce comes back. So the Chiefs know what they're doing. I don't know they're going to be back to that dominant Chiefs dynasty team, but they're definitely going to be better than last year. It really depends once Patrick Mahomes comes back. If he comes back week 1, yeah, they're for sure better. If he doesn't come back till maybe, mid-season or week 5, 6, that might hinder them since they don't have a good record once he comes back. But I still think everyone's going to have them in the playoffs. They're going to be odds-on favorites to make the playoffs. Probably not to win the division, but no one's going to say the Chiefs aren't making the playoffs next year. And if they do, that's obviously going to be more of a hot take. And it's hard to bet against the Chiefs. It's just hard to bet against the Chiefs. Denver Broncos. I'm going to put standing still with the league moves. I think this is the most obvious one. And we're standing still while the league moves. We haven't signed, at the time of this recording, we haven't signed one player from another team. We've only re-signed our own players, and we've lost a few players. We lost Jonathan Franklin-Myers and Drake Greenlaw we cut. We've restructured a few contracts. We have some room, but the Broncos have not made a big move. They're the definition of standing still while the league moves. They quite literally stood still. And I know they made the AFC Championship, so maybe we just stay still. Bo Nix got injured. That's why we lost. It's probably what they're thinking. They're probably thinking Bo Nix stays healthy and we make the Super Bowl, which is probably true. But to run it, we had a lot of one-score games, and it would be kind of good to improve our team. But I guess we're going to just improve through the draft, which is obviously a method. Just improve through the draft, keep that same core. But they are standing still while the league moves. That's unanswered. They're not making big moves. So that is all 32 teams, all ranked. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you disagree or disagree with a few of them or disagree with the whole list. Just let me know. And more videos to come.